Now, say my name.
I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions red which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty and despair."
Maybe you and I could partner up.
Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
It is growth, then decay, then transformation. It is fascinating, really.
In the late 15th century, a philosophy emerged in ancient Japanese culture known as wabi-sabi. This tradition defined beauty not through the terms of our superficial tendencies, but through simplicity and imperfection. Their perspective encouraged a society of humility, offering an ideology that advocated for beauty being incomplete rather than a pedestal of high expectations. Our insatiable need for greed discounts the total beauty of any given situation. And as we witness the hidden drug across the entire Breaking Bad universe, Walt threw everything away in pursuit of some kind of legacy, whether it would become celebrated or smeared. Saul could have accepted Chuck's relentless grievances instead of resorting to the kind of lawyer guilty people hire. And Jesse could have accepted a more honest path instead of bringing himself into a world of pain, misery, and torture. As John Kabat-Zinn once mentioned, acceptance doesn't by any stretch of the imagination mean passive resignation. Quite the opposite. It takes a huge amount of fortitude and motivation to accept what is, especially when you don't like it. Part 1. Pride.
Well, technically, chemistry is the study of matter. But I prefer to see it as the study of change. Lung cancer, inoperable.
We as human beings are fully capable of a wide spectrum of emotions. I believe that if we chose the sweetest, meekest person, that person, given the right set of circumstances, can become dangerous.
Doctor, my wife is 7 months pregnant with a baby we didn't intend. My 15-year-old son has cerebral palsy. I am an extremely overqualified high school chemistry teacher. I have watched all of my colleagues and friends surpass me in every way imaginable, and within 18 months, I will be dead. And that's how you would remember me. That's the worst part.
When discussing the role pride played in Walter White's life, it brings me to a study by social psychologist Paul K. Piff, where he brought in more than 100 pairs of strangers into his lab for a game of Monopoly. When they pressed go, one player was secretly given significant advantages, including extra starting money, higher salaries, and more opportunities to move around the board. So by all accounts, the game was rigged in their favor from the very beginning. As the game unfolded, Piff recognized some quick changes between the players. They began to move around the board more loudly, exhibiting signs of dominance and displaying lasting impressions of celebration, victory, and unsurprisingly, pride. And even if they're confused about how this whole game is set up, the simple domination of the situation negates any potential suspicion. They became less sensitive, more belligerent, and significantly less aware of their surroundings. The results showed that once they had climbed those levels of wealth, more compassion and empathy decreased, while their feelings of entitlement were at an all-time high. Does that sound familiar?
My name is Walter Hartwell White. I live at 308 Negra Arroyo Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
By the time he turned 50, Walt could never escape the legacy of being a high school chemistry teacher who also worked at a car wash while being deliberately emasculated by his family. Because when someone's hypothetical reality precedes them, it can be hard to remove themselves from the what-ifs and the if-only-I-could'ves. What if I didn't leave gray matter and just stayed with Gretchen and Elliot? If only I could have understood my fears of not being a provider for someone who's already so wealthy. But since those thoughts led nowhere but to inoperable lung cancer, once he was able to find that liberation no matter how corrupt it was, he couldn't help but wake up and want to feel alive. By the time Walt feels like he's in control, his pride becomes a mental fishing hook, dragging Hank into more conspiracy, or Jesse into still being partners, or convincing Mike to simply respect him.
You just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego. Do what you're gonna do.
If you believe that there's a hell, we're already pretty much going there, right? But I'm not gonna lie down until I get there.
As sports scientist and author Dr. Craig Manning once mentioned, perfectionists fall into the same behavior patterns as ego-oriented people, because they're also outcome-oriented.
So the ego is always in need of approval. Hence what the research says, ego-orientated mind does not persist at things because it's not seeing the results. It's not getting that approval until it achieves that outcomes, and outcomes are hard to achieve. Either very easy or very hard. Easy to guarantee their success and feel good about themselves, or extreme, so if they don't achieve it, they can say, well, I wasn't supposed to achieve that anyway.
But because Walt didn't picture his life turning out the way it did, his ambitions sought to reach higher standards after leaving a company that he hoped wouldn't succeed without him. But little did he know that it would become a billion-dollar juggernaut, which only amplified his insecurities about being forgotten, unrecognizable, and just another pawn for Gretchen and Elliot to continue
Adding to your millions.
His grievances are a sign that he fears being insignificant, a worthless dime across dozens of quarters. And again, to quote Manning, this is how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader.
He became very clumsy with his emotions and became very careless and impulsive. He completely changed. And so if those issues are compounded or consistent and reoccurring, a condition changes in a human being, and they start getting into that more and more. Well, Walter White made this decision, and he had to create a lie to back up that decision. And he had to create another lie to back up that first lie, and so on. And pretty soon, he's a pretty good liar.
I won.
Walt could have contributed to work that would have decorated him with wealth and accolades, but that soon became a faint memory of those what-ifs and if-only-I-could'ves, which is the same trigger that trickled down during his childhood.
He's looking right at me. But I can't even be sure that he knows who I am. But the only thing I could remember is him breathing. This rattling sound, like if you were shaking an empty spray paint can, like there was nothing in it. That is the only real memory that I have of my father. I don't want you to think of me the way I was last night. I don't want that to be the memory you have of me when I'm gone. And that's how you would remember me. That's the worst part.
Walt's most pressing fear is being remembered as a man who refused to take action in times of struggle. And this memory of powerlessness has been the only association he has kept of his father. No recollections of playing catch or hearing a bedtime story, but a shackled, dying rasp of his old man lying in a hospital. and as Walt grew older, perhaps his mother told him about the many great things his father had contributed to his lifetime, but we as viewers would never know that because he never felt that way. Leaving a legacy became a cornerstone for Walt's most formative years, and when he reached middle age, he reconciled with how empty his life had become compared to the high expectations he had set out for himself. So when the only lane he could drive towards was selling meth, he took it, grabbed all the power he could have, and felt exhilarated through the entire process because he never knew what it felt like.
I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
Walt is trying to convince himself when he says, I am the one who knocks, of something that he, in that particular moment, somewhere deep inside, knows not to be true.
As Bryan Cranston mentioned earlier, given the right set of circumstances, there's always a reason as to why we choose to knock. Whether it was when co-founding Grey Matter, having a family, or deciding to become a ruthless kingpin, his addiction to scale and status was able to justify his worst thoughts and insecurities. Rather than being prescribed as a blank slate who can only teach the periodic table of elements, he aspired to prove how his intellect was a force to be reckoned with. As Carl Jung once warned, the ego is in every respect an illusionist. Its specialty is to deceive you about who you really are.
You know, he says in the final episode, he says,
I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. I was alive.
there was this overweening pride and ego that you see pretty much from the first season on. And it hides underneath some sort of really terrible low self-esteem, some sort of shattered, broken image of himself. It's like that old saying about Hollywood. It's not so much that it changes you, but that it reveals your true self. And I think, in my opinion, that's what happened to Walter White. It revealed his true self. There was kind of a monster underneath it all.
Part 2. Honesty.
Not a real lawyer.
I'm what?
You're the kind of lawyer guilty people hire.
You're not a real lawyer.
There are wolves and sheep in this world, kid. Figure out which one you're gonna be.
We all make our choices. And those choices, they put us on a road.
In the end, you're going to hurt everyone around you. You can't help it. So stop apologizing and accept it. Embrace it. Frankly, I'd have more respect for you if you did.
It's all good, man.
You think about getting off,
Better call Saul!
but eventually you're back on it.
We're done. When I say we're done.
Yeah, I know what stopped me. You know what? It's never stopping me again. Let justice be done, though the heavens fall.
Have a nice life, Kim. The truth is, you've never mattered all that much to me.
Remember, the winner takes it all.
What happens when honesty becomes a trick and deception becomes the canvas? If you know nothing about general psychology, chances are you're at least somewhat familiar with the dark triad, which includes narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. And as psychologist Dan Jones once noted,
so while a narcissist will charm you and a psychopath will mug you, a Machiavellian will invade you.
So in discussing narcissism, this term tends to define self-importance, committing to a world of entitlement and believing that no one is above you. We can see that it applies to characters like Walter White. However, psychopathy can be explored through various characters in this universe such as Todd, Uncle Jack, Tuco, or Lalo Salamanca. Each character embodies that cold, shivering feeling down your spine, that they will have no remorse whatsoever for any crime that they commit. But a Machiavellian, oh, a Machiavellian. Let's see what Professor Jones has to say.
A well-prepared Machiavellian is like the lion you don't see. and they've been planning their attack longer than you realize.
Machiavellianism was derived from a 16th century political philosopher and author named Niccolò Machiavelli, who argued for the right to power and status in the hierarchical structure of monarchies, where the princes who are the rightful heirs to the throne should do whatever it takes to overthrow the king. But with that said, while Walt's Machiavellian traits come from domination, Jimmy McGill's comes from flexibility. To always find a loophole in order to ensure the safety of himself, his clients, and the very people he cares about. Psychologists have found that in honesty, 3 notions contribute to this habit. The first is something called belief speaking, which occurs when you communicate with what you believe to be accurate information. The second is truth seeking, which is the pursuit of incorporating precise information into your beliefs. And the third is fostering understanding, which comes from the promotion of accurate information. And while he may cut corners, there was a time when Jimmy McGill was trying to do that very thing. However, his deep-seated anger and resentment towards his brother only built pillars of trickery that later became so difficult to dismantle. When we're being honest, we really hope to be socially valued. But whenever Jimmy tried to play that game, he rarely felt a sense of acceptance. As a kid, Jimmy was taught how weakness came from inaction and strength comes from taking matters into one's hands, no matter the approach. And as we continue through the show, even though it began with stealing money from his father's cash drawer, practicing deception became his only means of survival. As psychologist Bella DePaulo once mentioned, lies are like wishes because often what is said is things people wish were true. In the language of deception, liars typically don't stray away from the idea of being responsible. They tend to address certain guilt that presides over their subconscious, saying things like,
"Lightning bolt shoot from my fingertips!"
Many studies have addressed how we all tend to lie in one way or another. Whether it's blatant, like saying, "I do care about you," when you're clearly trying to con them, or a white lie, where it's just a simple, "I really like this birthday present," when in reality it's just fine. While some might describe trust as shared understanding, others define deception as a division of one's understanding. And whether in the court of law or a quick con, people can believe just about all of it. Lying can also be born from an unhealthy amount of projection, and much like the relationship between Chuck and Jimmy, the simple phrase of what psychologist Dr. Courtney Warren states,
"I'm not like that, you're like that."
Chuck's belief in the law undermined Jimmy's capacity to change. It's been told time and time again that if you're honest about what you feel, those expressions are reciprocated. But since the law was his genuine pride and glory, you can't amend feelings that have been burned into your core since childhood like Chuck's was.
There's only one mention of our mom in the first season. So we're assuming that now mom's probably gone. But mom is very heavy in our scenes because you're the one who made her laugh. I'm the one who made her proud. And to the primitive brain, that means that she loved you more. And I'll never forgive you for that. So along with, Jimmy, you know I'm telling you the truth about this, and the law is sacred and all that, there's that other element too.
Jimmy.
No, Mom, it's me, Chuck. Did she wake up? Did she say anything?
Jimmy.
No, Mom. It's me. No.
I know you. I know what you were, what you are. People don't change. You're slipping Jimmy.
Chuck's way of life has reason, creates structure. It's a belief system that binds us to conceive of the explanations between right and wrong. Still, much like Jimmy, he's open to using that power to satisfy his own way of seeing the world, like when he manipulated the legal system to play with his little brother's fate. But as we say in basketball, Jimmy decided to take buckets.
He'll never change. Ever since he was 9, always the same. Couldn't keep his hands out of the cash drawer. But not our Jimmy. Couldn't be precious Jimmy. Stealing them blind. And he gets to be a lawyer. What a sick joke! I should have stopped them when I had the chance.
Jimmy turned into Saul because it was the only reality that accepted him, and the only person who could take him down a peg was Kim Wexler. But as she continued to play alongside his shenanigans, she found that the current sank so deep into complete and utter chaos.
I have had the time of my life with you, but we are bad for everyone around us. Other people suffer because of us. Apart, we're okay, but together, we're poison.
In the end, you're going to hurt everyone around you. You can't help it, so stop apologizing and accept it. Embrace it. Frankly, I'd have more respect for you if you did.
And by the end of the day, only the short term can benefit from something as presumably innocent as a lie.
No matter who your lawyer is, you are screwed. So I gotta ask, where do you see this ending?
Where do I see it ending? With me on top, like always.
There you go. Kick him in when he's down.
Jimmy, you are always down.
Psychiatrist Dr. Ann Lemke describes the theme of radical honesty as the subsequent contender for the potential sea of lies, stating that it can 1. Promote awareness of our actions, like when Saul commits to shedding his own persona during the trial and saves Kim from any potential legal troubles. 2. Fostering intimate human connections, like being respected by his cellmates, knowing his fate was long overdue. And 3. Leads to a truthful autobiography, which is all about writing your life's journey through facts and accuracy. This one in particular had me thinking of what Chuck and Jimmy's autobiographies would have been like if they had written one. My assumption about Chuck is that he would have written stories in a similar style to the one he told Kim about Jimmy when they were younger.
My brother is not a bad person. He has a good heart. It's just, he can't help himself. And everyone's left picking up the pieces.
And with Jimmy, at first the stories would try to be truthful, but a lot of the chapters would have probably turned out scattered and confused, right until the very end with one honest moment.
Fact is, Walter White couldn't have done it without me.
If you build this armor around you, if you're this legal caricature, I keep calling them, you don't feel anymore. You're not worried about things. And it's also kind of a screw you to the world.
Saul had a conscience, which was great, and you saw that in the show. But it was one that he lost track of fairly easily.
Are you gonna play it straight? Or are you gonna be colorful?
It's all good, man.
That guy has a lot of energy.
Yeah. It's just a name.
Part 3. Change. One of the most famous psychological principles of all time is Carol Dweck's growth mindset. Why do you think that's the case? Well, it's pretty simple, really. But before we discuss that, let's explore its other half, which is the fixed mindset, a process of thinking that can only be described as one that resists change. If you are confronted with a problem, the only way to reflect is by thinking, what's worked before? The growth mindset, however, goes beyond asking and states, what am I doing wrong, and what can I do to solve it? Dweck argues that intelligence is a muscle, and with the effort of pumping that neural iron and giving your mind multiple sets of synaptic squats, your life can reach a place where your state of mind is clear. And I do think that if Jesse learned a thing or two from Dr. Dweck, we would have had an entirely different character arc. Probably not the most bingeable one, but an emotionally intelligent one. Jesse never had the chance to grow into the best version of himself during his childhood, and especially after graduating high school. He had very little motivation and no sense of direction, yet he possessed a foundational understanding of curiosity and innocence. And although the contrary of betrayal and violence greatly influenced him throughout the show, There was a humanity to this character that allowed us to empathize with him.
So no matter what I do, hooray for me because I'm a great guy. No matter how many dogs I kill, I just do an inventory and accept.
You know, he's not a good guy, obviously, because he's in this world, but he does have sort of a stronger moral center than what Walt was showing. You know, like the initial idea is, oh, you're gonna take this good guy and you're gonna make him bad. Whereas Jesse was a little bit the opposite, like, oh, he's a bad guy. No, he's actually a good guy. And that was coming out more and more. Of course, he kept getting it wrong, and, you know, and Walt exploited those bad aspects of him.
And with each moment unfolding through a series of unfortunate events, before he could reset his life, he happened to learn about Walt poisoning Brock. And when he decided to take revenge, that ultimately led him to a fate he would never wish on anyone.
Whenever he sees just a glimpse of hope, it's just instantly just taken away and just literally shattered right in front of him.
Maybe it's time for you to just leave all of this behind. Just get out of town. Don't look back. In a few years, this might all feel like nothing more than a bad dream.
Jesse went through multiple kinds of trauma, more than any other character in the show. And while each of his own selfish actions led him to this place, you still can't help but feel that he wants to change. And while a fixed mindset fears challenges, a growth mindset welcomes them. And while curiosity may be the bane of a fixed mindset's existence, a growth mindset only thrives when asking questions that inspire them to keep learning. Jesse's character arc also reminds me of this theory called the trans-theoretical model of behavioral change. This theory proposes that through deliberate practice and perseverance, you can ultimately achieve astounding results if you complete 5 key stages. The first stage in this change process is called pre-contemplation. This is before you realize what you're doing is wrong. In Jesse's case, it was to slack off in school, go through this whole drug charade, and even when his parents and Mr. White told him to put more effort, he resented the notion that he could be ridiculed and ultimately defied those recommendations by continuing this directionless path. The second stage is contemplation, where you start to understand that enough is enough and it's time to pave your own path. And there were several moments in the show where Jesse proves that he's willing to contemplate, but 2 for 2 in a 5-stage model doesn't cut it because next up is the third stage of change, which is preparation. This is where you make intentional acts to start shifting this bad habit, like going to rehab or sobering up or finding a place for yourself or even attempting to leave the drug world. The fourth stage is action. Jesse leaves Walt for good and accepts that escaping Albuquerque would be suitable for him. And in this case, yes, he relapses, but you'll see where I'm going with this. Ultimately, the fifth stage is maintenance, which enables these new habits to become regular habits. In the show, Jesse nearly crossed those stages, except for his arc in El Camino. By the time we reach this film, there has been a cataclysmic shift in Jesse's demeanor. He's much more mature, soft-spoken, and considerably intelligent, which was something that was consistently undermined in the show.
Or what about a magnet?
What magnet? What about it?
Once Jesse escapes, he has already passed the pre-contemplation stage because he very well knows that the suffering he went through is something he would never wish to endure again. He contemplates how to leave and prepares to meet Ed the vacuum guy, give him the money to disappear, and move to Alaska. But when Ed tells him that he's short of $1,800, he takes action by retrieving the money from Neil and Casey. And as we cut to a proud Jesse, satisfied with how life could turn out to be, we as an audience can certainly believe that he will maintain and ultimately change. And as Dweck once mentioned, becoming is better than being.
I've gone where the universe takes me my whole life. It's better to make those decisions for yourself.
Walt, you say the word, and I'll take you on a ride along. You know, you can watch us knock down a meth lab, huh? Get a little excitement in your life.
Someday.
While balance is crucial, numbing your life shouldn't become more satisfying than living at all. Walt's description of chemistry is that chemistry is the study of change, where chemicals, elements, and bonds can be malleable and take any form. However, there can be an argument about whether humans can be the same way. To quote the Greek philosopher by the name of Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And while finding your path can be a positive attribute, when done in vanity, the path you lead isn't a righteous one, but a self-righteous one. When this kind of habit starts to develop, your sense of entitlement can lead to harming others, even unintentionally. A lack of acceptance can easily lead to one's inevitable demise, but self-worth allows us to approach our emotions with openness and vulnerability. Walt was filled with unrelenting pride and wanted a more dignified life. Jimmy wanted to take revenge on a world that rejected him and ultimately decided to advertise his trickery for the rest of his life. Jesse, on the other hand, wanted to have something to contribute, even if it came with a great deal of regret. But at the end of their stories, each took a path towards retribution and accepted their fates as one that could only be decided by them. A life worth living is a life of meaning, and what we must examine thoroughly, rather than relentlessly, is our aspiration, purpose, and the people we surround ourselves with. Because that's the only chemical reaction that determines which frontier we choose to be alive.
When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and the diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured, with much applause in the lecture room, how soon, unaccountable, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical, moist night air.
And from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars.